So let's see. Okay. So what we're going to do here, we're going to do a very quick recap of who JMT is, just in case anyone on this line doesn't know that already. We had literally many, many names of non-clients that found us and signed up on this link. And so we just want to make sure everyone understands who we are. Then we're going to talk about things like adapting to remote nonprofit work, the struggles that everyone seems to be telling us about right now, and some of the things that we have been able to help people with, and that we're currently helping people with as we navigate these crazy times together. So first, I want to start by saying that, you know, for those of you who don't already know, Jackie, our founder, started this company almost 30 years ago. And what the whole idea was to work only with nonprofits. So this is all JMT does, in case anybody didn't know that. It's not a division of JMT that works with nonprofits. It's all of JMT. This is what we do. We live, eat, sleep, and breathe nonprofit. And Jackie started the company up in New York, in Paterson, New York, and we now have offices in Manhattan, Nashville, Austin, and really wherever our clients are is where our office is. And now with Zoom, our offices are in all our homes too. I hope everyone likes my backdrop here in my home. But our team is just our people who are all comprised of coming from different angles on working with nonprofits. And again, that's all we do. So today I'm going to be doing sort of the MC and a little bit of the presentation. I'm going to have my colleague Joel, who's also going to contribute, and then also my colleague Zachary Griggs on the line here as well to help out when we talk about one or two of the other topics. But the whole thing that we're dealing with right now, as Jackie said in her keynote, is this is a completely unprecedented situation. And it's, I think, probably the most frustrating thing about an unprecedented situation is we don't have experience to draw upon. And that's why the keynote was valuable, because of course, Jackie at least can draw upon going through a recession before, but when it comes to the Corona and the COVID or whatever you're calling it these days, it's none of us have ever seen anything like this before. So we are at JMT, our priority is obviously working with nonprofits. And the things that we have heard from our clients are, like you would expect, and really relating to what Jackie said about laying out a plan, is the first priority is just keep operations going. We literally had clients who were scrambling and still are scrambling to just cut checks, pay the bills, keep the basics going. So that's priority number one, obviously. Then the next priority is planning that path forward. And then the final thing that we want to touch on today is when the dust does settle from all of this, what have we learned and how can we make adjustments to make sure that if we got burned on something that perhaps we hadn't prepared for, that in the future that won't happen to us again. So I'm going to talk first about the basics. Whoops. I think we missed a slide, but anyway, we are all dealing with the fact that we have to do all those things I just mentioned from our new office, which in this case looks like a lovely home in the suburbs. And we're all doing that now. We're all working from our home offices. But you know what? I happen to have a colleague who maybe, I don't know if she's in this breakout or not, who lives in the Bronx in New York in a 2-bedroom apartment with 3 people. So her office maybe is a little bit more like this. So we've got to deal with the fact that we're not only working from our homes, some of our homes are pretty confined and really weren't meant to be a home office. And we also have a whole bunch of new coworkers. Some of us are trying to work while having children on our laps. Some of us have pets peeping their faces at us as we try to get our job done. So this is a strange situation, and we have to deal with all of this with each other as we try to find this path forward. So how, in this crazy environment, how do we effectively run what we call the back office? Obviously, this is geared mostly towards finance people, but let's start with the basics. What we have found, unfortunately, is we have some clients who still were paying all their bills with paper checks, and now suddenly they're told they can't be in their office. And we've heard stories about clients who've had their printers FedExed to homes and things like that, trying to just get the bills out the door. So from the basic standpoint, there are some tools that JMT has seen already help our clients. And I'm going to have my colleague Joel talk about some of them in a moment. But some of the tools we're going to highlight here, one would be Bill.com, one is AvidXchange, and one is American Express Payment Services. But even before getting there, even if you don't employ one of these tools, what we would absolutely tell all of our clients, if you haven't already done this, and you have to understand that this crisis, as we all know, it just started, what, a couple weeks ago. And I would hope by now that everybody on this line is already doing what they can to pay the bills. But the very first thing I would suggest is if you have a general ledger system, and the two that JMT works with, MIP and Intect, both do have this capability to pay by ACH or EFT, where you can at least at minimum make payments to your vendors with NACHA files that you can upload to your bank. Most banks, of course, have online banking capabilities. Even if you're logging into your bank website and cutting checks and manually entering journal entries into your on-premise general ledger system, at minimum, you've got to find any and all ways that you can to pay bills via electronic, so you can at least eliminate the physical problem of having to cut checks and stuff envelopes and mail them out. So if you have a system that can do it, do it. If you have a bank website that can allow you to, do it, and do it as soon as you possibly can. But with that said, even if you employ everything you've got at your disposal in the way of NACHA files and so forth, you're going to run into situations where there might be vendors that won't let you set them up as a NACHA file vendor to pay. You know, you have a vendor that doesn't give you their banking info and they just give you an address and you got to pay them. And so that's where some of these other tools come in. So Joel, I'm going to ask you to speak now. Joel wants to kind of highlight two solutions that JMT works with that we've seen some of our clients use to get checks cut, bills paid, and so forth. Joel,
Thanks, Andy.
Are you unmuted?
Yep.
There you go. Yeah. I'll keep control of this slide. Yep. Sounds good.
All right, great. Well, working from home and having some new coworkers is something that I'm dealing with right now. The landscaping crew decided to show up right at the time I actually have to speak. So, I mean, they're pretty much right on cue. So if you can't hear me very well, I'll try and tell them to turn off the leaf blower or something. But I appreciate it, Andy. And you know, on the last slide, there was 3 logos up. On this slide, we just have 2 of those 3 that we wanted to run through. And in recognizing, I guess, the issues that folks are dealing with, we've been speaking with all of our clients, or as many of them as possible, through this crisis, and taking notes and understanding what issues they're dealing with. And AP automation, even though it's more necessary now, I feel like it's something that our clients have been wanting to do for quite some time. However, certain funders or grantors have had these requirements that placed nonprofits in a state that they needed to keep paper. They needed to continue to issue checks. And so the silver lining, I guess, of this pandemic for a lot of these nonprofits is that these grantors are a little bit more lenient and looking at different ways that they could receive payments and history. So these 2 vendors here, Bill.com and AvidXchange, they have quite a bit of similarities, and there's a couple of differences. And so I just wanted to run through essentially what the main premise of these vendors' mission is as far as the solution they provide. On the AP side, they also offer some accounts receivable automation and supply management stuff. But for today's call, just to talk about the AP, and then obviously I want to talk about the differences. So there's a whole lot of words on this slide, and Andy actually gave me a little bit of a speech about too many words. So if you want to read them, great. I'm not going to follow along to what's on this slide at all to keep Andy happy. So essentially, the big thing here is that both of these vendors here will give you a digital way of receiving invoices and maintaining them. And so, with technology today, you would think, well, digital storage is something that should come with every software system. But the fact of the matter is that there's a lot of accounting systems out there that you can't actually store PDFs potentially with a bill, or you have to have that paper trail of actually keeping these invoices. And so one of the things that these vendors help with immediately is to be able to store those documents digitally, ability to search them, pull them up, have them as a reference whenever needed. So in receiving that document digitally, basically you could scan and load it into the system. It has technology that could pull information like vendor name, the amount, certain things on basically every invoice, and it could pre-code that information for you. So whenever you think about automation. It's going to save with, you know, the typing of certain information off an invoice into your accounting system. It's going to be able to pull that data just by reading it, you know, within their software. Both systems offer multiple different workflow options, so you can have a custom workflow if you need multiple approvers over certain dollar amounts or whatever that may be. They can work with you to get that done. And both of them offer essentially an electronic way of making payments to these vendors. So with Bill.com, for example, whenever you go through the appropriate approval chains, you could select how you would like to pay a vendor. So in a, you know, an example, if you have landlords that you're paying because you have maybe clients, homeless clients that you have them living at a landlord's place, you need to make, say, 500 monthly landlord payments, and you know those landlords need a check. With Bill.com, you could select check, and they will put essentially a check in the mail and send it on your behalf. And vice versa. So you could do ACH, or, you know, if you know how your vendors want to get paid, you could make that selection. With AvidXchange, they have a database of thousands of vendors, and they know exactly how those vendors want to get paid. So whenever you go through the approval processes and, you know, you basically approve that payment, AvidXchange will then pay that vendor based on how they've been paid in the past. And so they have the same options that Bill.com has. They have ACH, check, virtual card. But one of the really cool things with AvidXchange is they, here comes the weed blower guy. It's amazing. It's amazing how this happens. You know, one of the cool things is that, and I'm getting closer to the phone, so that way you can hear me better, just so you all know. If they make a payment with like a virtual card or an ACH, AvidXchange actually receives a little bit of revenue of that, and they actually share it with the client. And so at the top of this slide here, you can see basically the minimum for both Bill.com and AvidXchange. So Bill.com is at 50 bills per month. That's not a threshold that they live by. It just seems to make sense once you have 50 bills or more per month that an automation system like Bill.com comes in to, you know, the ROI on it with time savings and everything else makes sense to move that way. With AvidXchange, it's a little bit higher at 250 or more bills per month. And that's mainly because since they do have that vendor database and how they make payments, they could, you know, offer that revenue from their side as rebates with your software system, and oftentimes offset the fees with AvidXchange, you know, either mostly or fully for that given month. So they're both really inexpensive ways of, you know, doing away with paper. And, you know, I think about it environmentally, obviously you're saving trees, but also, you know, right now, you know, I spoke with a client last week who they have, you know, essentially a procurement team and budgeting team, and they receive all the invoices, and they literally walk those invoices over to the next office and have them approve it. And they are essential workers. They're having to be in the office right now. And you just think about paper touching that many people's hands. Not only is it, you know, cutting down trees, but also it's a risk for that organization. So there's a lot of external value that these things are providing our clients right now. And hopefully this gives you a good summary of what those are. The other thing, you know, I'm not sure what systems you all have. We partner with MIT and Intact. Potentially you have those systems. Both of these systems work great with those systems. How many times can I say systems? They also have integrations with other systems as well. So Bill.com works great with QuickBooks. AvidXchange, I think, has over 170 integrations with different accounting systems that they work with. So whenever you do make those payments and they go through the reconciliation with your GL, you know, it's basically posted directly into your system. So it's great. Next slide, Sam. Vendor payment services with American Express. This is for Intact users only. We just want to touch on. It's built within Intact system. It takes a couple of hours to add it. You could essentially make those ACH. You can make Amex credit card payments, or you could have check delivery. with this product. Just takes a couple hours of your time. Like Avid Exchange, since this is offered through Amex, there's a lot of rewards that you could reap whenever you make payments with the credit card. So, you know, it's a good way to do away with paper and then also get some rewards from it. And just like that, the lawn care service is done too.
Of course.
Amazing.
And maybe, I'm sure I'll have one start up here now.
Yeah.
But Joel's in Texas. His lawn's already growing nice and thick. I'm kind of in the Midwest. Mine's sort of growing. And then there's probably people on the line in New York who maybe don't even have that. The next part I want to talk about is the plan forward. You know, we talked about the basics. We talked about just keeping operations running, getting payments made and so forth. And there are other things. I don't want to disrespect that there are other priorities that come with just keeping the lights on besides just paying the bills, dealing with revenue and everything else. But what we're trying to do here in this little workshop is highlight some of the tools that JMT has that we can help you with, knowing full well that there are many other problems. Much as we would love to be able to solve all of your problems, there are going to be some that we can't do anything about, such as revenue streams drying up or whatever else is going on. And I just want to make sure that you all know that we understand that painfully well, that you're going through that as well. But as you look to recast your plan, Jackie spent her keynote talking about the plan. And I can tell you that all of us who work here at JMT were communicated with about that plan. Gosh, it's been over 2 weeks now. That you've got to be able to have a plan, and you've got to be able to see through to the end. So what we've got now is a situation where throw everything out. Every assumption you had, I would say 65, 70% of our clients have July 1 fiscal years. And here they were 3/4 of the way through their fiscal year when the crisis hit. All the assumptions that were built into your plan, and maybe the plan you're building right now, or we're in the process of building for the new fiscal year, you can just throw them out. And now we've got a completely different set of circumstances. And so there's a lot of really difficult work that goes with pulling a plan together. At JMT, it's much easier, we recognize, to pull a plan together than it is for a nonprofit with 65 programs, like somebody we spoke to this morning. 65 different projects. JMT doesn't have 65 different projects and program managers, all with budgetary responsibility. So we recognize there's a lot of complexity to a lot of our clients, and you've got to have a tool that can help you get through that. So does this sound familiar? We've got this new crisis that just hit us, and now your board says, I need a new plan and I need it now. And so you have to quickly change all of the previous assumptions that were in your existing plan. You also, changing that isn't just you in finance. It's involving and collaborating with all of your coworkers who, as we joked about earlier, are now suddenly remote and possibly with children and dogs in their laps, and possibly not really set up to be remote employees as well. You really don't have time. No one has, right now, if there's anything we've all learned in the last couple of weeks, it's that time is so precious. And just when you think you've got one set of circumstances, it changes again. And so you can't waste time on data collection and massage and data entry. You want to be able to make decisions about that data. And again, as I said, just as soon as you've recasted your plan, what happens? Something changes. There are sometimes good things that change. I know just last week, I think in just the course of a couple hours, the federal government announced some relief for nonprofits for payroll. Well, if you had just finished up your new plan and then you got that news, you'd be welcoming the news, but at the same time, you would probably be, if you didn't have a good system, you might be thinking, okay, I guess I got to figure out how to dump all those new numbers, those positive numbers, into my plan. So the idea is wasting your time pulling numbers together is not a luxury you want to have right now. You want to be able to work on making decisions about that plan. But if you have this tool that we're going to talk about now, no problem. Because ultimately what you might get is a sheet that looks something like this one here. Now, you don't have to strain your eyes to look too closely. I recognize there's a lot of little tiny numbers on that slide. But this is right from a tool called Vena Solutions that JMT works with, which is a budgeting and planning tool, FP&A, as they say, financial planning and analysis tool. And it works beautifully. It's a cloud-based tool, but it also leverages Excel templates for the input screen. So basically, it gets rid of all the bad stuff of Excel and keeps the good stuff. So if you have a tool like this, it's really no problem to do everything I just said on that previous slide. You're able to go to, this would be an example of perhaps your master plan. Everything, and you probably can't see it in too much detail, but everything from every department is all here, consolidated up into your master plan, and we have it listed out as a statement of activities here with your revenues and your expenditures in a typical format. So you've got now this beautiful looking plan with all of your budget going through the end of the year that incorporates all of your assumptions and new numbers. But behind this, more importantly, I've highlighted in red here, this is just one example. You can see that it's highlighting one particular location and one particular program. Again, don't strain your eyes too hard, but that's the idea, is that this is a sub sheet that rolls up into the one that I just showed you. So imagine that your coworker in the tiny New York office that I showed you earlier in their apartment with their galley kitchen, imagine that coworker has access to a sheet like this for that coworker's department or program and can enter their data right into a sheet like this, and it automatically rolls up and consolidates. I'm going to go backwards with the slide. Consolidates back, thereby making up the numbers in this first sheet that I showed you. This is a reality with a tool like the Vena tool that we're helping our clients with right now. And what it means is that you aren't spending your time having to pull all this together, because they're entering their data here and it rolls back up to your overall budget. And you may have, in the case of the person we spoke to this morning, 65 people who are entering this data. That's no problem, because it will roll up seamlessly and automatically to your overall plan. And what you can do to make it easy for your staff is it gives you the idea, this is just a screenshot of how easy it is to set up an actual workflow, to actually set up the steps that anyone would have to do to get their plan approved, entering their operating expenses, as you can see there, their other expenses, and then making sure everything balances. But it just walks you through this entire workflow and makes it a nice, easy visual for everybody to understand how their workflow is going to work. And so it makes it easy for your staff, but more importantly, it gives you some reassurance, because it's really hard on managers right now too to have the suddenly remote workforce, because you've got to not only communicate with people, but you have to worry that, hey, look, people are dealing with reality. We have one of my coworkers is dealing with a very real situation right now, where there's one child of toddler age and two adults in the house who both have full-time jobs and are trying to work from home, and they're passing the toddler between each other. It's hard to be as productive for an 8-hour day as you would have been before COVID. And so we understand those are the realities of all of our coworkers right now. And so with this status tracker, you can really check and see where people are in the process, and gives you some reassurance that they're on top of things and that you see where they are in the process. But it really allows you to manage the overall collection of data as it all rolls up, so that ultimately you can have that plan that you need for your CEO and your board. With that come automatic reminders. So you can gently remind people when they've got things due. You can have reminders for yourself. Hey, I'm going to do a grant budget in 2 days. Now, some of these might be less appropriate for the crisis that we're in right now, where it's really just rolling up one big plan as quickly as you can. But even if you broke it out into other sub-plans like grants and personnel and things like that, you would be able to have these reminders to help you kind of manage the process for yourself and for others in this app. So the bottom line is, as it said a couple slides back, you're able to be collaborative, and you're able to have a system that can help you to really ultimately gather the data you need and make decisions upon the data you need very quickly. The final part of it is that all that data can be presented in a way that matters to your boss. We have another client of ours who I was talking to earlier today said that his CEO is constantly knocking on the door saying, hey, I need some numbers. I want to know where are things. We're changing things. I heard about this other thing there. I understand when you're in finance right now, you're under a lot of pressure. All of us are, but particularly I think in finance, so often we see where you are the gatekeepers of the information that everyone else in the organization is using to make their decisions. And so the last thing you want to do is have to keep telling your boss, hold on, it'll be another 6 hours before I can give you those numbers. You want to be able to give them board-ready reports or CEO-ready reports in this example when they need them. And this is a real report right out of the system that just automatically gets produced. So again, back to the idea of no problem. You can manage through this environment with a tool like this. This is just another example of a board-ready report that I have here. You're able to quickly and easily pull all this data together and ultimately then spend 80% of your time being strategic instead of maybe 20%. So often we hear just people, you know, CFO people, very, very, very well-educated people who are saying, you know, I didn't get this job because I'm really good at massaging Excel spreadsheets. I got this job because of my analytical and strategic abilities, and yet I don't find myself able to use them all the time because I'm spending so much of my time on data collection. Well, you're able to flip that here and really be strategic and be quick. So you're not going to have to spend your time emailing and receiving versions of spreadsheets. Just getting 65 different versions of the same spreadsheet from your 65 project managers like the guy this morning and having to parse them all together doing what we call Excel gymnastics is a task that nobody wants. And then you have formula errors that you have to start searching for. You have to constantly check on the progress of staff and maybe send them the emails. Hey, where are you? Am I going to get my sheet? And as I said a moment ago, putting off your executive director or your CEO when they're asking you for the data. So the idea is here, you could, with this tool, actually be able to very quickly navigate through this crisis that we're in. And the reality is that we can help. We have come up with normally this is a tool that we would work with our clients and say, you know, you want to take your time and we're going to train you up on how to administer your own internal system, train you on how to create your models and do all that other kind of stuff. But we recognize that in this crisis situation that we're in right now, that you don't have time. No one wants to hear about a month from now, 2 months from now. Everyone wants to hear about what can you get me now? What can I do right now to help myself, to help my organization navigate through this crisis? So we've come up with a way that our clients can take advantage of this tool with an affordable monthly fee with very little cash up front. And we then handle the administrative part of it for you. And we can have you up and running in 10 days. So this is something that, you know, again, at the end of the session, if anyone wants to have further conversations, we'll follow up with you and we can have those. We recognize also I keep referencing this conversation I had this morning. I learned so much. This CFO that we were talking to said, you know, we actually are in a good cash position. It's great. But that doesn't mean we want to spend our money. We've got to be careful. Our board is very reluctant to spend any money right now, understandably. So with the affordable monthly fee aspect here, you're able to take advantage of this tool to allow you to really have that way of seeing yourself through the end of this storm. And hopefully the dust will settle sooner rather than later. But as Jackie said in her keynote, you can plan for the worst and be pleasantly surprised if it doesn't go as long as, you know, the end of the year or some of the other projections that sometimes you hear. So I'm going to move on now and talk about what did we do, how did we learn, what have we learned from this situation, and what can we do to make sure that we don't get caught flat-footed in the future if something like this ever happens again. You know, JMT has been around for almost 30 years, and for about the past 10 years, 1/3 of that time, we've been partnering with Sage Intacct. Sage Intacct is a true cloud-based, internet-based accounting software. And I remember, I tell the story a lot, I remember when we first became a partner, I did a few like traveling roadshow lunches with Jackie, our founder, where we talked about, can nonprofits, can you put your finances in the cloud? And sometimes chunks of those sessions, those lunch meetings, would be sort of arguing with people when they would say, no one's going to put their finances in the cloud. That's never going to happen. People don't trust it. I think now we all know, we've been saying even before COVID hit, the cloud's here and pretty much nobody argues that point anymore. But now the real crisis is that if you're not in the cloud and you're now suddenly working from home, I don't need to tell you how painful that is. We have, unfortunately, far too many nonprofits that we've spoken to in the last few weeks who are in that situation. I had a guy literally tell me he had to go get special permission from security in his building because there was a known case of COVID in their building. He had to get special permission to go back into the building to grab his paper checks and to grab the little token that he has in his bank that updates the security code every 45 seconds to log into online banking. He had to get permission to run back to the office and technically risk his own well-being in doing so because of not having a cloud-based tool and all these things. So with Sage Intacct, we recommend that you have a tool like this because of future disruption. I think we don't know what's going to happen with COVID. I've heard some people say there's going to be another spike in the fall. God forbid, I hope that doesn't happen. But we want to make sure that we don't hear from any clients that tell us that they're stuck because their software is only sitting on a server in their server room in their office. And so the reason we started partnering with Sage Intacct, just to give you an overview of it, is it truly is latest generation of technology. I recognize that many of the people here on this call are finance people and not perhaps IT or technical people, so I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of the technical part of it. But the bottom line is you don't want to buy technology that's older generation. There's a blog post that I wrote fairly recently where I used a personal painful anecdote from my own life. My wife and I bought her a new iPhone, and we bought an older one because it was cheaper. Thought we could save money. Well, we got notified by Verizon that they're no longer supporting her iPhone. So that what we thought was smart of us to buy an older generation of technology kind of bit us. But that's a minor aggravation, and it's much more serious if you have technology that's obsolete or dated and there's a problem in the world that causes that a true disruption. And unfortunately, there's some painful examples of that going on right now. So with Sage Intacct, you know that you are on the latest generation of technology, and that matters. Sage Intacct is committed to nonprofit. Obviously, JMT is only doing nonprofit, and we are simply not going to work with a software publisher that doesn't have a commitment to nonprofits. And they also get a lot of fine endorsements from the likes of AICPA, and anybody who's a CPA knows how important that is. It is a very powerful but usable tool. I would say another one of our litmus test items that we talk about at JMT when we look at tools that we want to work with. There's lots of great technology tools out there, but if the average nonprofit finance person can't figure out how to use it without having an IT degree or going and getting somebody from IT or knowing something about coding, then it doesn't do you much good. So with Sage Intacct, you find that it is powerful, but also usable. So those are the major reasons why we work with it, but it is truly cloud-based. Any browser will do, Chrome, Google, whatever you want to use. I guess that's the same, Chrome and Google. Firefox, Explorer. It's based on dashboards. The whole idea is that it gives you visibility into your organization with dashboards. This is just a snapshot of a nonprofit dashboard in the Sage Intacct system. And as you can see, there are lots of visual ways of laying out the data for you, pie charts and such. What you can't see, because this isn't a live copy of the software, is if this were, and I were to click on any of those blue numbers or words in the middle sections there, those are drill downs that take you all the way back to the transaction level detail. So it gives you a lot of information, and the whole idea of it is to give you the visibility you need front and center in the way that you look at your organization. And so the CFO might have a different dashboard than the controller. Everybody can have their own look because everybody sees different slices of the organization and from different angles. And then the other thing that we really like about it is that it is actually able to incorporate not just dollars and cents, but key performance metrics, non-financial data, and how it interacts with the financial data to tell the true story of your organization. This on the screen that you see right now is an actual example from one of our clients. This isn't their software. This is a demo database that we used to prove this concept out with them, but they're an organization that they get a revenue number from their board. They say this year we need to grow by X number of dollars. It's kind of almost for-profit-like in the way they think like that, but their whole thing is number of clinicians and the revenue generated by clinicians. That's the key for them. They need to know if the board says you got to grow by X number of dollars, then they know, hey, our revenue per clinician is X or Y, and that means we have to hire this many more clinicians in order to hit our revenue goal. Intacct allows them to be able to do that. This very screen right here, we showed them when they were considering Intacct, and they made it a reality in their live system, which they use to this day. So these are the kinds of things that we're seeing our clients be able to do, and it's increasing their ability, as I said on the other section here, to be strategic in their organization. I'm hearing a little bit of background noise, but I'm not sure what that is. I don't have a landscaper here, so in closing, I don't think we're going to go the full hour by any stretch here, but I want to give the opportunity in the small group, if anyone has any questions, they're able to, I believe you can raise your hand and or chatter them. Any questions come through, Sam, that you saw? Give it a moment. Well, in the meantime, what I will tell you is that everyone should know that we're going to follow up with you from this call. So if we're going to check and just see, look, we understand you might have just been looking at the product showcase out of curiosity, but you might have a legitimate, urgent need at this moment. If that's the case, we'll talk to you about how we can help you figure that out and figure out if any of these products can help you. If you don't want to wait for someone to call you back after this meeting, you want to get a hold of us right away, there is an email address on the screen that you can use. Did I see a chat come through, Sam?
Yeah, we had one. Is Sage Intacct software much like MIP?
Sage Intacct compatible with donor software, much like MIP. Yes. In fact, I would say much better than MIP, to be very candid, because Sage Intacct has an open platform that makes it much easier to pull data in from other tools than MIP does. But just as MIP, you can basically pull flat files from any tool, and or even in some cases I've seen other integrations be built. Intacct is yes and then some, because it has the ability to, if you have somebody that wants to write code and actually use the open APIs of Intacct, you can make a real live integration. But the ability to pull flat file information like you see from a donor system is very easy to do in Intacct. It's so easy, even I can do it, and that's no joke. Because MIP has a middleware or a step called definition files that Intacct doesn't have. What we do find just on that topic is that generally over the years, what we've noticed is that the finance department and the fundraising departments, obviously you want to cut down on redundant data entry. You don't want, if a gift comes in and someone in fundraising codes it, you don't want to have to retype the same thing over in finance. And so most of our clients over the years, flat file import, just simply a spreadsheet or something from the donation management system, importing it into the general ledger is in most cases, I'd say 85% of the time, that works really well for finance. It still gives you the opportunity to check those numbers and not have to commit them or post them to your general ledger without first giving it a financial look over. And any other questions?
Not seeing any.
I also just want to apologize to my colleague Zachary. I listed him as a presenter, but I never did ask him to add anything on that section. So I know he's disappointed. Another question is, Sage does the bills.com and AvidXchange allow for secondary controls? I'm not sure I understand what you mean by that question. Joel, do you understand what is meant by that? If not, you could, Karen, if you want to type a little bit more about what you mean about secondary controls. Joel, if you're speaking, you're muted still.
Is that better?
That's better, yes.
Great. I'm getting to be a pro at this doing stuff, let me tell you. So there's custom workflows that could be built out if you have, okay, I think it came in. There's, if you have dual signers or anything like that, it could be built within both of those systems, but I think you added to the question.
Yeah, a system that only allows one staff person at the ACH version. Yeah, in other words, separation of duties, we might call that, and the answer is yes, and that's accomplished through workflow and that kind of thing.
Definitely. Great question.
Thank you. Thanks, Karen. Well, any other questions? We'll give it another moment, see if anything. I realize when you're typing, sometimes you need a little bit of delay. I'd hate to cut somebody off in mid-sentence.
I guess the only other thing I'd add to that, Karen, is that there's the audit trail as well within both of these systems. I don't think I touched on that, but it is a third-party system, and so everybody that logs into it or goes through any sort of approval process, that IP address is tagged to that individual input. So there's a lot of controls with that to hopefully keep that from happening again.
Great. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what kind of things come through in the new audits after what everyone's learned this year. Yeah, MIP is cloud-based but not web-based. Yeah, it's a very very interesting point you make there. There's a lot of there's a big difference, and if you're you know, the Intact and tools like that are truly written for the cloud. In fact, I only learned a couple of years ago, sadly, I never figured out that Intact actually means internet accounting. Does the web-based database make it more or less secure? It's almost like you knew that I wanted that question to be asked. It makes it far more secure, and it's very interesting because I referenced earlier that back 10 years ago, when we became a partner with Intact, and Jackie and I would do these travel and road shows about putting your finances in the cloud. At that time, I remember one of our slides was the #1 reason why people are reluctant to go to the cloud is fear about security. And yet, after people were in the cloud and did their homework, at that time, may have changed. At that time, the #2 reason that they ended up going with the cloud was they learned about the security and realized it's far more secure than you could ever have in an on-premise or other situation. JMT is you know, some of you are painfully aware right now that there was a well-known security problem with another software that happened in the last 2 weeks. Really, on top of this COVID crisis, it's been just devastating. And so I know that there are a lot of people asking questions about that. And so Sage Intact is well aware that there are people asking questions like this. And so in fact, I happen to see that a colleague of mine from Sage Intact is on the line, and just this morning she gave me some really good information that came from the head of the Sage Intact security that addresses some of these questions. And my understanding is there's also going to be a presentation recorded that will be able to be shared to go into much more depth about what that means and why we're so confident. Again, none of us on the line here, I don't believe are internet security people or IT people right now, but trust me when I tell you, the security with Sage Intact is far more secure than what you're going to find most other places. So, and as this information becomes available, I expect JMT will probably be putting this out on our website or socializing it in some other way so that you can learn more about it. But thank you for your question and comments. You're welcome. Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining us here today. I think what I'm supposed to do is release everyone back to the major group, or you can leave. Is that right, Sam? Is that what we're supposed to do here?
That's correct.
Okay, so do I do that or do you do that?
I don't know. Let's see. Okay. I think we all just click leave breakout room.
Ah, okay. Well, thank you everyone. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Andy.